Have you ever felt like you're suddenly seeing the world through completely different eyes? Like you've been sleepwalking through life and someone just shook you awake? What if I told you that the discomfort you're feeling right now, that sense that something isn't quite right with how you've been living, isn't a problem to fix, but the beginning of the most important journey you'll ever take? Today, we're diving deep into the 5 unmistakable signs that you're experiencing a spiritual awakening. This isn't about religion or adopting exotic beliefs. This is about waking up from the trance of social conditioning that's been limiting who you really are. But I need to warn you, once you recognize these signs in yourself, there's no going back to your old way of seeing the world. The matrix of conventional thinking that once felt so comfortable will never look the same again. So if you're ready to face some uncomfortable truths about yourself and the world around you, stay with me. These next 40 minutes might just change everything. Welcome back to the channel. For those new here, we explore the hidden truths behind personal development, stoicism, and the journey toward authentic living. Before we dive in, I want to clarify something important. Spiritual awakening isn't about floating above mundane reality or escaping your problems. It's quite the opposite. It's about becoming radically present to what is real, often for the first time in your life. The word spiritual itself can be misleading. I'm not talking about angels, crystals, or mystical experiences, though those might be part of some people's journeys. I'm talking about waking up to the reality beyond the social programming that's been running your life on autopilot. Think of it this way. Most of us are living in a kind of hypnotic trance. We absorb beliefs about success, happiness, and what makes a good life from our parents, education, media, and culture. We internalize these messages so deeply that we mistake them for our own thoughts and desires. A spiritual awakening is the process of seeing this conditioning for what it is, a matrix of borrowed ideas that may have nothing to do with your authentic self or what would truly fulfill you. Let's explore the 5 most common signs this awakening is happening to you. The first sign you're experiencing a spiritual awakening is an increasing awareness of your own thought patterns. Most people identify completely with their thoughts. I am my thoughts. When a thought arises like, I'm not good enough or I need more success to be happy, they accept it as truth without questioning. Thoughts are seen as reality itself, rather than mental events happening within consciousness. What's actually happening is far more fascinating. Your thoughts are not you. They're just mental events appearing in your awareness, like weather patterns passing through the sky. They're conditioned responses shaped by your past experiences, cultural programming, and biological impulses. The revolutionary insight of awakening is recognizing the space between you and your thoughts. You begin catching yourself thinking. You start noticing the repetitive nature of certain thoughts, how they cycle through your mind, creating familiar emotional states that drive predictable behaviors. This awareness creates a crucial separation. You're no longer merged with every thought that arises. You can observe the thought, I'm a failure, arise without becoming it. You can watch the thought, I need their approval, without being consumed by it. This is the beginning of freedom. Not freedom from thinking, but freedom from unconscious identification with thinking. Let me share a personal example. For years, I was plagued by perfectionist thoughts. This isn't good enough. People will see through you. You need to work harder. I believed these thoughts were me, my high standards, my work ethic, my commitment to excellence. I was completely identified with them. Then, during a particularly intense meditation retreat, I had a moment of seeing these thoughts arise as if from nowhere. I watched them appear in consciousness like bubbles rising in water. For the first time, I could see the gap between the awareness that I am and these habitual thought patterns. They weren't truths, they were just thoughts, conditioned patterns running on autopilot. This realization didn't make the thoughts disappear, but it completely transformed my relationship with them. I could now choose whether to believe them or simply let them pass through awareness without attachment. This single shift reduced my anxiety by about 80% within a few months. Your mind is a tool, not your identity. Just as you wouldn't say, I am my hand, you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear. This perspective allows you to use thinking when beneficial and set it aside when it's not. Thoughts are largely recycled conditioning, not original insights. Most of what we think are echoes of our parents, teachers, media, and culture, not authentic expressions of our deepest wisdom. Recognizing this allows us to question whether a thought serves our authentic development or merely reinforces conditioned patterns. In practical terms, how do you work with this awakening insight? Start a daily practice of thought observation. Set aside 10 minutes to simply watch your thoughts arise without engaging with them. Notice their patterns, their emotional tone, their recurring themes. When caught in negative thought spirals during the day, practice the pause. Literally saying to yourself, "This is just a thought, not a truth." Create physical reminders in your environment, perhaps a small symbol on your desk or phone that prompts you to ask, "Am I identified with my thinking right now?" These simple practices will gradually deepen the space between you and your thoughts, allowing you to respond consciously rather than react mechanically. As you work with this first sign of awakening, consider these reflection questions. What recurring thoughts do you notice creating suffering in your life? And can you remember when and how these thought patterns were first installed? What would your daily experience be like if you could observe your thoughts without automatically believing or identifying with them? The beauty of this awakening is that it doesn't require you to change your thoughts, only to change your relationship with thinking itself. And that shift changes everything. Now let's explore the second sign of spiritual awakening, a growing disillusionment with conventional notions of success and achievement. Society teaches us that happiness comes from a linear path of achievements. Good grades lead to a prestigious education, which leads to a high-paying career, which leads to material wealth, which leads to fulfillment. The narrative tells us that status symbols, the right car, home, partner, and social recognition will make us feel complete and worthy. This narrative fundamentally misunderstands human fulfillment. Research in positive psychology consistently shows that beyond meeting basic needs, additional wealth and status produce diminishing returns on happiness and can even create new forms of suffering. The awakening mind recognizes a profound truth. The conventional success path is a hedonic treadmill. Each achievement provides only temporary satisfaction before the goalpost moves again. The promised arrival, the moment when you'll finally feel enough, never comes. What's more, this path often requires sacrificing the very things that create genuine fulfillment: deep relationships, meaningful work aligned with values, presence, and inner peace. The conventional success narrative sells a future-based happiness that continually defers living fully in the present. Most disturbingly, this narrative isn't a natural expression of human values. It's largely engineered to fuel consumption and maintain social hierarchies. The feeling of not enough is profitable for systems that need you to keep consuming, achieving, and competing. I've witnessed this awakening in countless clients and students. One executive I worked with had achieved everything on his conventional success checklist: the corner office, 7-figure salary, vacation homes, prestigious social circle. Yet he felt a persistent emptiness he couldn't explain. During our work together, he realized that his pursuit of success had been largely driven by his father's conditional approval that was always tied to achievement. He'd been chasing external markers his entire life, hoping they would finally silence the inner voice telling him he wasn't enough. But each achievement only temporarily quieted that voice before it returned, demanding more proof of worthiness. His awakening wasn't about abandoning achievement, but recognizing that no external success could heal this internal wound. Once he saw the pattern clearly, he began reorienting his life around experiences that created genuine fulfillment, deep connections, creative expression, and service to causes he cared about. Not surprisingly, his anxiety and depression lifted as he stepped off the treadmill of proving his worth through achievement. There are alternative ways to view success. Success can be seen as presence and alignment rather than achievement. From this view, success is measured by how fully you're showing up in each moment, how aligned your actions are with your deepest values, and how much your unique gifts are being expressed, regardless of external recognition. Life can also be viewed as a cyclical journey, rather than a linear path. This perspective sees life as naturally moving through seasons of growth, achievement, consolidation, and release, rather than a continuous upward trajectory. It values periods of apparent non-achievement as essential for integration and renewal. To work with this aspect of awakening, begin defining success on your own terms. Write down what truly matters to you when stripped of social conditioning. Not what should matter, but what does matter when you're most connected to yourself. Experiment with enough practices. Set clear boundaries around work, consumption, and achievement striving. Notice the discomfort that arises when you stop chasing more and stay present with it, rather than immediately filling the void. Create regular rituals that honor non-productive values: contemplation, connection, creativity for its own sake, and service without recognition. Find examples of alternative life paths that inspire you, people who've stepped off the conventional track to create lives of meaning and fulfillment without conventional markers of success. As you navigate this disillusionment, consider these questions. If you achieved every external success you're currently pursuing, what inner state are you hoping these achievements will create, and could you cultivate that state directly? What would you do differently in your life if you were free from the need for others' approval and validation? This awakening to the limitations of conventional success doesn't mean abandoning ambition or meaningful goals. It means ensuring that your goals arise from your authentic being rather than from social programming about what should make you happy. Now let's explore the third sign of spiritual awakening: a dramatic increase in sensitivity and empathic awareness. Our culture often views sensitivity as a weakness to overcome. We're taught to develop thick skin, not take things personally, and maintain emotional boundaries that protect us from being affected by others' experiences. Success in competitive environments requires a certain emotional detachment and focus on personal objectives above collective well-being. This hardening against sensitivity served a purpose in hierarchical, scarcity-based social structures, but it comes at an enormous cost to human development and collective wisdom. As awakening unfolds, many experience a dissolution of the rigid boundaries between self and other. You may find yourself deeply affected by suffering you previously could ignore, whether it's a homeless person you pass on the street, environmental destruction in distant locations, or subtle emotional cues from those around you. This isn't weakness or emotional regression, it's the emergence of a more integrated form of perception. Your nervous system is literally rewiring to process more information, including energetic and emotional data that conventional consciousness filters out for efficiency and self-protection. The discomfort this creates isn't a problem to fix, but a necessary growing pain. Your system is expanding to hold more of reality, including its shadow aspects that collective consciousness works hard to suppress and deny. I remember when this heightened sensitivity first emerged in my own awakening. Walking through a crowded mall became overwhelming. I could feel the emotional undercurrents of strangers, the anxiety, loneliness, excitement, and frustration swirling around me. I initially thought something was wrong with me and sought to restore my previous emotional boundaries. Then I met a mentor who helped me understand that my sensitivity wasn't pathological, it was evolutionary. I wasn't breaking down. I was breaking open to a more comprehensive way of knowing the world that included emotional and energetic information alongside intellectual understanding. With practice, what initially felt like overwhelming sensitivity became a form of intelligence that enriched my understanding of complex systems and relationships. I learned to regulate my nervous system without numbing it, to remain permeable without becoming overwhelmed. There are different ways to understand this increasing sensitivity. Sensitivity can be viewed as expanded intelligence rather than vulnerability. This view recognizes that empathic awareness gives access to crucial information about systems, relationships, and collective patterns that analytical thinking alone cannot perceive. Boundaries can be seen as conscious choice rather than emotional armor. Rather than maintaining rigid defenses against feeling, this perspective involves remaining open while choosing where to direct attention and energy based on wisdom rather than reactivity. To work with this heightened sensitivity, develop practices for processing emotional information. Regular emotional clearing through journaling, movement, or sound allows you to remain open without becoming overwhelmed. Reimagine boundaries as permeable membranes rather than walls. Practice consciously choosing when to absorb and when to allow experiences to pass through your awareness without attachment. Find or create communities where heightened sensitivity is valued rather than pathologized. Connecting with others experiencing similar awakenings provides crucial validation and shared wisdom for navigating this transformation. Develop discernment about when and how to act on empathic awareness. Not every emotional response requires immediate action. Sometimes bearing witness with presence is the appropriate response. As you navigate this increased sensitivity, reflect on these questions. What pain or suffering in the world have you been numbing yourself to? And what wisdom might be available if you allowed yourself to feel it more fully? How might your increased sensitivity be serving as an intelligence that's guiding you toward right action, rather than a burden to overcome? The awakened heart doesn't close against pain, it opens further, finding in that very openness a resilience and wisdom that closed systems cannot access. Let's move to the fourth sign of spiritual awakening, a fundamental questioning of who you really are. Society teaches us that our identity is a stable collection of attributes, our profession, roles, personality traits, beliefs, preferences, and history. We're encouraged to build a coherent story about who we are and to present a consistent self-image to others. This identity becomes the foundation for navigating life decisions and relationships. During awakening, this seemingly solid identity begins to reveal itself as a constructed narrative rather than an inherent reality. You may experience moments where the story of me temporarily falls away, revealing a more spacious awareness that precedes all self-definitions. What you once took as fixed traits, I'm an anxious person, I'm not creative, I'm an introvert, start appearing as habitual patterns rather than essential qualities. Your preferences, beliefs, and even deeply held values may shift in ways that confuse your conventional self-understanding. This can be profoundly disorienting. The question, "Who am I?" transforms from a philosophical abstraction to an immediate existential inquiry. You realize how much of your identity was inherited rather than chosen, absorbed from family, culture, and traumatic adaptations rather than arising from your authentic nature. Most disturbingly, you begin to see how this constructed identity has been limiting your experience, how identifying as a practical person might have closed you to mystery, or how identifying as a nice person might have disconnected you from authentic anger. A client of mine experienced this identity dissolution during a year-long sabbatical after burning out from her high-powered corporate career. She had always defined herself through achievement and competence. When she stepped away from her career, she entered an identity crisis that initially felt like depression. "Who am I if not the woman who gets things done?" she asked in our sessions. "What's my value if I'm not producing, achieving, solving problems?" As uncomfortable as this questioning was, it created space for aspects of herself that had been suppressed by her achievement identity, her creativity, spiritual yearning, and capacity for deep presence with others. She discovered that beneath her doing-based identity was a quality of being that had been with her all along, but had been overshadowed by constant activity and accomplishment. When she eventually returned to work, she brought this expanded sense of self with her. Her identity was no longer confined to achievement, but included the spacious awareness she had discovered during her sabbatical. This integration transformed her leadership style, relationships, and sense of purpose. There are different ways to understand this identity questioning. Identity can be seen as a fluid process rather than a fixed entity. This perspective sees the self not as a noun, but as a verb, an ongoing, dynamic process of becoming that naturally evolves through different seasons and contexts. Identity can also be viewed as capacity and awareness, rather than attributes. From this view, who you are is not your story, traits, or roles, but the open awareness in which all experiences, including thoughts about self, arise and pass away. To work with this identity questioning, experiment with temporarily setting aside core identities. If you strongly identify as a logical person, practice approaching situations through intuition. If you identify as a helper, experience receiving without giving back. Develop a regular practice of self-inquiry. Rather than accepting thoughts about yourself at face value, use questions like, is this really true? And who would I be without this belief about myself? Create space for emergence rather than self-improvement. Instead of trying to become a better version of your current identity, create conditions through meditation, nature immersion, creative expression, where something new and authentic can emerge. Practice identity as playful expression rather than serious definition. Experiment with different ways of being without attachment to permanence, allowing yourself to express different facets in different contexts. As you navigate this identity questioning, reflect on these questions. What aspects of your identity feel most threatened when challenged, and what might this reveal about where you've been seeking security in impermanent definitions? If you had no need to explain or define yourself to others, what aspects of your current identity might naturally fall away, and what might emerge in that space? The freedom that comes from recognizing the constructed nature of identity isn't the absence of self, but a more fluid, authentic expression that isn't confined by rigid self-definitions or the need for consistency at the expense of truth. Now let's explore the fifth sign of spiritual awakening, a fundamentally different experience of time. Modern society operates on chronological time, linear, scarce, and productivity-focused. We are taught that time is a resource to manage efficiently, that the past determines the future, and that life moves predictably from birth to death in sequential stages. Our value is often measured by how we spend time, and anxiety arises from the fear of wasting it. As awakening deepens, you may notice dramatic shifts in your experience of time. Moments of presence can expand into timelessness, while periods of unconscious activity seem to vanish without registration. The sharp boundaries between past, present, and future may begin to blur. You might discover that psychological time, the mental projection into past and future, is distinct from chronological time. Much of human suffering comes from living in psychological time, ruminating about the past or anxiously planning the future, while missing the only moment that's actually real, the present. Most significantly, you begin to notice how the conventional relationship with time creates artificial scarcity and urgency. The constant rushing from one moment to the next in pursuit of some future fulfillment reveals itself as a core mechanism of the unconscious life. The awakening mind recognizes that time is not merely an objective reality, but a subjective experience profoundly shaped by state of consciousness. In states of flow, creative absorption, or deep meditation, the conventional experience of time can completely transform or even disappear. I noticed this shift in my relationship with time after several years of meditation practice. What began as subtle moments of timelessness during formal sitting gradually expanded into daily life. I found myself naturally moving at a pace that felt aligned with the actual requirements of a situation, rather than driven by internalized urgency. This wasn't about becoming passive or unproductive. Ironically, my efficiency increased as I stopped fighting against the present moment and learned to work with the natural timing of creativity, relationships, and energy cycles. The constant background anxiety about time scarcity began to dissolve, replaced by a trust in timing that paradoxically allowed more to get done with less effort. Most surprising was how this shift affected my relationship with mortality. As past and future revealed themselves as constructs appearing in the present moment, the fear of death transformed. Death was still a biological reality, but the psychological fear associated with time running out began to loosen its grip. There are different ways to understand this altered relationship with time. Time can be seen as cyclical and seasonal rather than linear. This perspective, common in many traditional cultures, sees time as moving in natural cycles rather than a straight line. It honors the natural rhythms of activity and rest, growth and release, rather than constant forward progress. The present moment can be viewed as the only point of power. From this view, both past and future exist as mental constructs within the present moment. All healing, creativity, and transformation happen in the now, regardless of what content from past or future is being processed. To work with this altered time perception, develop a regular practice of time-free awareness. Set aside periods where you deliberately release all time constraints and allow experience to unfold at its natural pace without monitoring duration. Experiment with monochronic focus rather than multitasking. Give full attention to one activity without splitting awareness, noticing how this affects your experience of time's passage. Create rituals that honor transitions rather than just outcomes. Rather than rushing from one activity to the next, consciously close each experience before beginning another, allowing a moment of integration. Practice regularly asking, "What time is it really?" Not to check the clock, but to notice whether you're mentally living in past, future, or present. When caught in time-based anxiety, use this question to return to the concrete reality of now. As you navigate this altered relationship with time, reflect on these questions. How much of your daily anxiety comes from racing against clock time, rather than aligning with the natural timing of your body, creativity, and relationships? What would your relationship with mortality and aging be if you experienced life as a continuous present rather than a diminishing future? The awakened relationship with time doesn't mean ignoring schedules or responsibilities. It means inhabiting time differently, with presence, fluidity, and attunement to natural rhythms rather than mechanical urgency and future fixation. Now let's explore how these 5 signs interact and reinforce each other in the awakening process. These 5 signs: increasing awareness of thought patterns, disillusionment with conventional success, heightened sensitivity, questioning of identity, and altered relationship with time, aren't separate phenomena. They're interconnected aspects of a single shift in consciousness. When you begin to observe your thoughts rather than identify with them, you naturally start questioning the conventional success narratives that many of those thoughts support. As those narratives lose their grip, the emotional armoring they required begins to soften, allowing increased sensitivity and empathy to emerge. This heightened sensitivity reveals the constructed nature of your identity, showing how much of your self-definition was created to conform to social expectations rather than express your authentic nature. As this constructed identity becomes more transparent, your relationship with time naturally shifts. Because much of chronological time anxiety is sustained by identity-based fears about achievement, security, and mortality. The awakening process doesn't usually unfold in a linear, sequential manner. You might experience flashes of all 5 signs from the beginning, with each becoming more stable and integrated over time. There may be periods of dramatic opening followed by integration phases that feel like plateaus or even temporary regressions. This awakening isn't always comfortable. In fact, it often begins with a period of disorientation or even crisis, as the familiar structures of your conditioned life begin to dissolve. But what initially feels like breakdown is actually breakthrough, the necessary dismantling of false structures to reveal what's authentically true. Many people initially seek therapeutic or medical support during awakening because conventional frameworks pathologize these experiences. What looks like depression from one perspective might be the necessary disillusionment with false premises about life. What appears as anxiety might be the nervous system adjusting to heightened sensitivity. What seems like an identity crisis might be the healthy questioning of conditioned self-definitions. This doesn't mean that therapeutic or medical support isn't sometimes appropriate during awakening. But it does suggest that pathologizing these experiences can interfere with their natural unfolding. The best support comes from those who recognize awakening for what it is, an evolutionary process rather than a disorder to treat. In my work with people navigating awakening, I've observed that the most challenging phase is often the middle territory, when you've seen through conventional narratives but haven't yet stabilized in a new way of being. This territory can feel like a groundless void where old certainties have dissolved but new structures haven't fully formed. The key to navigating this middle space is developing comfort with uncertainty. Rather than rushing to replace old beliefs with new ones, can you remain open in the space of not knowing? Can you trust the intelligence of the awakening process itself without needing to control or direct it from the egoic level? This ability to rest in uncertainty doesn't come naturally to most of us. It requires regular practices that build the capacity to stay present with discomfort without immediately seeking resolution. Meditation, body-centered awareness practices, time in nature, and creative expression can all develop this capacity. It also helps to find community with others navigating similar territory. Awakening can feel isolating when those around you don't understand or validate your experience. Finding even one person who recognizes and honors what you're going through can make a profound difference in your ability to trust the process. Remember that spiritual awakening isn't about escaping the world. It's about engaging with it more fully, from a place of greater awareness and authenticity. It's not about transcending your humanity, but fully embodying it. The awakened life still includes the full range of human emotions, including difficult ones. The difference isn't in what you feel, but in how you relate to those feelings, with presence and allowing, rather than resistance and identification. Awakening doesn't eliminate life's challenges, it changes your relationship with those challenges. It's important to avoid spiritual bypassing, using spiritual concepts to avoid dealing with difficult emotions, relationships, or situations. True awakening doesn't bypass anything. It includes everything with compassionate awareness. If you find yourself using spiritual perspectives to avoid facing certain aspects of your experience, that's not awakening but a subtle form of resistance. It's also crucial to maintain grounding practices as awareness expands. Regular connection with the body, the natural world, and practical responsibilities provides essential anchoring during times of rapid consciousness shift. Without this grounding, awakening energy can become untethered, creating detachment from ordinary reality rather than deeper engagement with it. If you're experiencing these signs, know that you're not alone, even if it sometimes feels that way. Throughout history, in every culture, people have undergone this fundamental shift in perception. What's unique to our time is that this awakening is happening collectively, to more people simultaneously than ever before. This isn't random. As our global systems reach points of crisis, environmental, political, economic, this awakening of consciousness may be the most important evolutionary development of our time. It may, in fact, be essential for our survival as a species. The challenges we face collectively cannot be solved from the same level of consciousness that created them. They require a shift from fragmented, ego-based awareness to the more integrated perception that awakening represents. Each individual who undergoes this transformation contributes to the collective shift that our world so urgently needs. So if you're feeling the discomfort of awakening, don't rush to suppress it or return to sleep. Don't pathologize your deepening awareness as anxiety or your disillusionment as depression. These may be appropriate responses to seeing through illusions that others still take as reality. Instead, honor this process. Create space for it. Find others walking a similar path who can validate your experience without trying to fix it. Most importantly, bring compassion to yourself as you navigate this profound transition. Awakening invites you into a more intimate relationship with reality as it is, not as you wish it would be. It asks you to embrace the totality of your experience, the joy and the sorrow, the connection and the loneliness, the clarity and the confusion, with equal presence and acceptance. This doesn't mean passive resignation to whatever arises. It means engaging with life from presence rather than reaction, responding to what's actually happening rather than to projections based on past conditioning or future fears. The awakened life remains fully human, with all the messiness and beauty that implies. You'll still experience the full range of emotions. You'll still face challenges and make mistakes, but you'll hold these experiences in a wider context of awareness that brings a fundamental peace, even amidst life's inevitable turbulence. As one of my teachers once told me, before awakening, you suffer. After awakening, you suffer consciously. The difference is profound. Conscious suffering becomes a doorway to deeper compassion, wisdom, and connection, rather than a problem to eliminate. If this video resonated with you, you might be further along in the awakening process than you realized. These signs aren't esoteric experiences reserved for spiritual adepts. They're available to anyone willing to look deeply and honestly at their experience. The path of awakening doesn't require special credentials. adherence to particular beliefs, or dramatic life changes. It simply asks for honesty, courage, and willingness to see beyond the conditioned patterns that have been running your life. Start where you are. Notice the thoughts you've been identifying with. Question the success narratives you've accepted without examination. Allow yourself to feel more deeply. Inquire into who you really are beyond your social roles and self-definitions. Explore your relationship with time and how it shapes your experience. These simple practices, approached with sincerity and persistence, can initiate or deepen the awakening process. The most profound transformations often begin with the simplest observations about your moment-to-moment experience. If this video resonated with you, share it with others who might be experiencing these signs without a framework for understanding them. Leave a comment about which of these signs feels most present in your life right now. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe for more content on navigating the journey of awakening with wisdom, compassion, and practical tools for integration. Remember, awakening isn't a destination. It's an ongoing journey of ever-deepening awareness and authenticity. The discomfort you feel isn't something going wrong, it's something going right. Thank you for your presence and attention. Until next time, stay awake.